Okay, this is good? All right, well, to our two audience members, thank you for coming tonight to the CEQA scoping meeting for the Medical Cannabis Cultivation and Commerce Ordinance in Calaveras County. It's a lot of alliteration right there. At any rate, one term that you're going to hear me say a lot, an acronym that you may have heard before, is CEQA, which refers to the California Environmental Quality Act, which was enacted in the early 70s and requires that an agency such as Calaveras County, the Board of Supervisors, consider the physical environmental effects that may occur as a result of a decision, a discretionary action that they take. In this case, it is the draft ordinance. And it generally requires preparation of a fairly substantial document. Sometimes they're called negative declarations, sometimes they're called EIRs. If you have a project that is considered to be of regional or statewide importance, CEQA guidelines say you should conduct a scoping meeting, which is why we're here tonight. And it's intended to provide information on the elements of the project and issues that we're going to take a look at in the EIR, and I'll get into when you'll be able to expect that EIR in the near future. Also to receive additional public comments that weren't received during the public review of the notice of preparation that came out in May. And then also to let you guys submit some additional written comments via the comment cards that we provided tonight. So really quickly, our agenda, it's pretty brief. First off, my name is Chris Mundhenk. I work for Ascent Environmental. We're a consulting firm that's been hired by the county to prepare the environmental impact report. The lead agency in this case, as I mentioned, is Calaveras County, and we are considering and evaluating the draft ordinance for cannabis cultivation and commerce. I will be giving a little brief history on the project, as well as some background as to why the draft ordinance is being considered, then go into a brief overview of what the ordinance actually says, and then talk about what the EIR scope is that you'll be seeing in a few months. And then talk about what will happen next after that draft EIR comes out. So getting into the project history, and this starts to go back about 11 years, when in 2005 the county adopted the Medical Cannabis Dispensaries Ordinance, but that ordinance was specific to only medical cannabis dispensaries, not to any sort of commerce or cultivation. And it prescribed an administrative use permit process. Then, in September of 2015, the state actually enacted what everyone is kind of referring to as MRSA, which is sort of the statewide program that for profit commercial activities related to medical marijuana. The state has said that they are going to be doing environmental review. It's supposed to be an EIR, but the state is a little bit slower right now, just because they've got their own processes to go through. So that's why the county is kind of moving forward, knowing that there is some urgency to having this regulated. So then on May 10th of 2016, the county did adopt the urgency ordinance, which is now part of Chapter 17.95, and this established sort of an interim program that would then be replaced by the draft ordinance, hopefully, if the Board of Supervisors approves it. Couple key points from the urgency ordinance is that medical marijuana cultivation is not considered an agricultural activity under the ordinance. It also required registration for cannabis cultivation. Everyone had to submit by June 30th of this year. The county has received approximately 900 applications to date. I believe 740 commercial, and then about another 140 that are personal or caretaker requests. Getting into some of the project objectives. So for any CEQA document that is prepared, we do have to have objectives, because when we do an EIR, we also will be evaluating alternatives to the project. So the county's objectives in this particular case are to have comprehensive regulation of premises within the county for marijuana cultivation or commercial activities related to marijuana. Also to maintain the health, safety, and well-being of the county, its residents, and the environment. Minimize risks, primarily regarding fire, odor, and pollution by unregulated cultivation. And lastly, to protect the county's surface and groundwater resources. Okay, really quickly into the draft ordinance. What it does, and this is available online through the county's website. It's about 3/4 of the way down the webpage. If you just do a search for medical marijuana Calaveras County, the county's webpage will pop right up. At any rate, it establishes land use regulations for the cultivation, manufacture, testing, distribution, and storage of medical marijuana through the establishment of zoning clearance certificates and permits. It also establishes a process for county verification of activities on individual sites, and it also establishes setbacks that will be required for any cultivation activities, as well as some of the more commercial activities that would be conducted on a particular site. Also, want to just note that on a broader sense, the draft ordinance furthers the regulatory framework that was established through the 1996 Compassionate Use Act, then furthered again through the Medical Marijuana Program Act in 2004, and also by MRSA, which I mentioned was in 2015. One other important note is that it does not modify anything that is associated with the medical dispensaries ordinance that the county adopted as well. So right now, we are kind of at the second bullet. The notice of preparation, as I mentioned, was issued in May of this year. The county received, I believe, 8 comment letters from agencies. And then today we're having the scope meeting where hopefully we get some additional comments. We will then be following that up in a few months with the draft EIR, which will again be released, and there'll be a whole set of notices, including in the paper again. That will have a public review period of approximately 45 days, where you'll get a chance to review and see what, through our analysis, we've determined would be the potential physical environmental effects of implementing the draft ordinance. During public review, we'll be conducting a public hearing where, again, we'll come back to you and say, if you want to talk to us and tell us what your comments are, great. After that's all done, we'll take all the comments that we've received, provide written responses to everything, and issue a final EIR that will then be what goes before the board for their decision. In terms of the scope of the EIR that's coming up, the county has identified several issue areas under CEQA that they want us to take a look at, those being air quality, including greenhouse gas emissions, potential impacts to biological resources, cultural resources, geology and soils, and within geology and soils that does touch on groundwater and maintaining groundwater. Also hazards and hazardous materials, which will likely deal with pesticides as well as other chemicals that may be used. Hydrology and water quality, again, also with pesticides and herbicides. Public services, potentially emergency services impacts, traffic, and utilities and service systems, which will also deal with water supply. In terms of the actual schedule, sorry, I've been saying May all this time. Public review for the NOP actually ended in May. It began in April. We are here tonight at the scope meeting. The draft EIR, or sometimes called the DEIR, will be ready in spring of next year, followed by the final EIR that will then go before the board in the summer of 2017, and hopefully EIR certification following that. In terms of public input tonight, I did want to note, and I know we just had a couple of people join us in the back, you are open to come and offer verbal comments tonight. However, if you would like your comments to be part of the record and be considered during our preparation of the environmental impact report, we're asking that you fill out the comment cards that are kind of at the entrance, and either turn them in tonight or you can turn them in a few days to Peter. We're asking that you try and turn them in by Friday, but beginning of next week would also be fine.
And Chris, I will be taking notes.
And Gary will be taking notes of any comments that you offer tonight. So if you do come up, please do just briefly state your name, but then if you do decide to just use the comment cards, there's a little slot for you to provide your name and address. Great. Well, I'd like to thank you guys, and if anyone would like to come up, we'd ask that you come up to the podium and just give us your comment. Sure.
My name's John Gill. I live in Glencoe. We have a guy growing dope on our mountainside. We're concerned about water. We're all on wells. That's our major concern. water going into the ground is a concern, but what's coming out, particularly with the drought, takes a lot of water. I personally believe commercial growers should have their water hauled in. They shouldn't be depending on, particularly, I mean, if they want to pay CCWD or whoever, the water department in the county, that's fine, but taking it out of the ground is affecting everyone, and we don't know how. I mean, I don't know where I could get a copy of the aquifer in our particular section of the county, if there even is one. So that's a big concern. I noticed that the cultivation of medical marijuana is not considered agricultural. You know, there used to be a timber tax up our way. Every tree felled, logging company paid a tax on it. And I know you guys have a program for taxing this stuff, which I think is a great idea. But as far as I'm concerned, you could triple the tax. If people want to grow that bad, then, you know, they'll pay it. And a comment from one of the folks up in Wilseyville, ought to be a requirement you live in the county for 3 or 4 years before you come up here and start growing dope. That's kind of a personal comment, but I think it has some weight. I don't think this is a good idea myself. I mean, but if the county ordinance gets passed that it bans commercial growth, then how are you guys going to go after the pirates? The guys who are taking the water out of the ground, out of the streams, diverting streams and stuff. There's no money for that. So that's not a good idea. So, I mean, this whole thing is kind of a big mess, and I wouldn't want to have to deal with it, because I would probably be rather, I think the term is draconian in any measures that I would imply on people who want to grow money or grow dope for profit. Because it's, to me, it's all about for profit. It's not about the poor cancer patients. And
I disagree with you on that, I'm sorry.
well,
I have a mother who has cancer.
no, I understand all of that. I
Miss,
understand that.
if you can let him finish his comments and then,
But people who are growing 99 plants, like I mentioned earlier, there's a guy 5 or 6 houses down from the school in West Point. They're from Tennessee. They're growing dope out there, and they're the guys with the generators, the grow lights, the guns, and the pit bulls. Nobody said boo about these guys, and it's right by the school. And that's not right. And they're not doing it to help your mom.
Yeah.
They're going to take every bit of that back to Tennessee and sell it for $300 an ounce or whatever. And if we don't recognize that and don't address it, then this is all for naught. I understand what you're saying, and I believe you, but that's totally different than commercial cultivation for profit. I think what we're talking about here, when people grow marijuana, 99 plants, it's for profit. It's not for their mom or themselves or whoever. And that's a big concern. But the water, I just have to, and I will fill out one of those, but the water, where's the water coming from? In our case, the neighbor, it's coming out of the ground. 4 folks live up there, 4 wells, one guy's taking all the water. I don't know how many thousands of gallons it takes to water 99 plants, but it's a lot. And I mean, I don't know, I could ramble on about this. I guess I'm just here to say I'm kind of unhappy about it. I know you guys are trying, and I want to give you a chance, but boy, I sure wish it would happen a lot faster than it is. I know nothing doesn't, I mean, you know, stuff doesn't happen fast, but it just keep plugging it away, and I'll be on your side. I want to see this work if it has to. I'd rather not see it at all, Will. Thank you.
thank you for your comment. Would anyone else like to offer comments?
I'm Bonnie Gill, and I live up the hill from these people. I noticed on his permit, it doesn't have any number of plants. It's like blank, so I'm wondering what that's all about. As he has it posted up on a little wooden fence, our neighbor does. And I would have thought that it would have said how many he was going to be allowed to have.
So the ordinance is based on square footage of cultivation area, not number of plants. So
Well-
the posting that should be there, the posting that's there now indicates that they have filed for registration. We're in the process now of reviewing those registration applications and determining which ones do meet our criteria and will be subject then to the approval, and those that don't, and either they need to rectify that or we will deny them. So that's part of the process we're going through right now. I don't recall exactly what's on those forms that they're supposed to be posting, but I think it's supposed to be the area that's they've stated in their application. Doesn't say the number of plants because we're not counting plants.
Okay. Will anything be taken into account if their neighbors are not happy about this and that they're like in a little cul-de-sac, basically?
Well, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to identify the issues that we need to look into as far as the environmental review. Ultimately, the county will come back with a revised permanent ordinance that hopefully addresses all of those issues. So we don't have the answers tonight.
Okay.
We're trying to identify the questions.
Okay, I was looking through the 29 pages of the perspective law, I guess you would call it, and it's a lot. Go away, fly. That's all I can think of for the moment.
Thank you very much.
Would anyone else like to offer up any comments? If you have more, that's fine.
Take advantage of the time.
I'm sure I just didn't notice it yet, but how far are the setbacks for the, from the road, from the parcel edges?
I'll let Peter.
I could look that up, but you can
Under
just,
the urgency ordinance, it's 75 feet.
75 feet.
The original draft ordinance had 30 feet,
Uh-huh.
and the board felt that 75 was more appropriate with the urgency ordinance, and so that's one issue that will be addressed and most likely modified when the final permanent ordinance comes before the board.
Thank you.
Okay. If no one else has any more verbal comments to offer up, again, I do encourage you to take a comment card and fill it out. If you have any input regarding the scope of the environmental analysis, we'd love to hear from you because we are just getting this process started and we want to make sure we include the analysis that we need to. But I do thank you all for showing up tonight. And if there's a question, go right ahead.
I was just...
It's being recorded.
Okay. Was thinking about the responsibility of, a realtor told one of our friends that it would be the responsibility of the other landlord or the other property owner rather than his renter should our well fail. And that the county, I don't know if the EIR will take all of this into consideration or if it really can. But it's definitely our concern. The water is our biggest concern.
Can you repeat that?
Did it not make sense? We're just concerned about, he lives down the hill, if the water table, if the water goes down, if our well goes dry.
So
Who do we go after?
that's not really something that we will address in the EIR. That's more of a legal issue between landowners. But the issue that we will look at is what is the potential impact on groundwater by permitting and allowing cultivation to occur in the county. And so groundwater law is complex.
I know.
And I don't know the answer to, if someone else, first it has to be proven that the drawdown by a neighbor caused the other neighbor as well to go dry. And groundwater issues in the county are complicated because we have a fractured groundwater or fractured rock system. So it's just, but we will be looking into the issue and what are the potential measures that we can to mitigate impacts to prevent that from happening, and that's part of what we're looking at as part of this process.
So will each of the 700 plus people be studied individually? It seems like that would take really a long time.
Probably not studied individually, but we will certainly be reviewing all of their applications and doing site inspections for each one, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I didn't come here with a whole lot of hope that I would get any kind of answers, but actually I'm kind of surprised. I just want to encourage you guys to please keep in mind that, like I think most of the grows are going up in District 2. I mean, if you just drive up there, I think it would be a great idea to have a meeting up in West Point or, up that way, because I really feel you drive around up there and there's guys camping on lots and stuff, and that's illegal right at the time, but it's going on, and it's kind of frustrating to not be able to, like, call a cop or call the county, call the planning commission, call the building department or building inspector or whatever and say, hey, this guy's growing a bunch of dope, he's got 2 ugly fences, a lot of pit bulls, and they're living in a trailer. And I don't even know if there's a well on the property. What are they crapping or using, what are they using for sanitation? Stuff like that. These are things that are happening right now up there that I don't know if you guys know about it or I'm sure that you care, but if you don't know about it, it's happening. And that's a big deal. But my point was, I'm happy you guys appear to be concerned about it. I am hoping that I will be smiling here in 6 months or a year, because I don't really care about what people do if it doesn't affect me. But I mean, this is America, and we have rights, and we're all we're really into our rights and all of that stuff, and that's fine. But next door neighbor taking thousands of gallons of water out of the ground, that just, to me, you don't have to be a physicist or a hydro water guy, excuse me, to know that this is not a good thing. That if this happens year after year after year, it's going to affect the water table, and we're looking at years. We're going to have to deal with this for years. And so if it isn't carved in marble now, I think strong regulations, it's just going to encourage people to come up here and kind of take advantage. Read the paper yesterday and about all the folks that sold out after the fire and all of the guys that bought all that property. Well, holy smokes. I don't know, there's something kind of unsavory about this whole thing. I mean, folks that need it are kind of in the minority as opposed to the guys that are looking for the dollar, I think. That's our opinion, most of us up there, that it's more about money than it is about folks with, that have a use for it. And I can't say that enough. It's about money. So we're hoping that you guys will You seem to be going on the right way. Like I said, I just wish we could grease the skids somehow. It's frustrating to go down my driveway every day and see a 6-foot wire fence nailed to trees and wrapped around bushes with nylon ties, and with some kind of phony tarpaulin stuff they put up there last year that's fallen down now. It's awful. It's like a tenement out in the middle of the tenement slum out in the middle of the forest. And do I have a trailer with the tarp over it? Yeah, I do. And our house probably looks like a hillbilly house, but it's got some order to it. It doesn't look like the place down the hill, and it's ugly. I invite you to come to 17,924 Highway 26 and look at this place, because to me, that's a prime example of what we have to deal with as a community up there, is people that don't care. Outsiders. Property owner doesn't live up there, and a guy who's growing the dope is from out of the... We've talked to this guy once in 18 months, and that was the day we evacuated the Friday after the fire up there. And he's not a nice person. He's not a good neighbor. And I think, and that's something I really want to these guys aren't good neighbors that are coming up here. If these guys lived next door to you, I'm very sure you'd be unhappy about it. And so that's the thing. I don't know if you remember or not, we were talking about the general plan down there. And I asked the board, and I actually asked Mr. Maurer, did you guys ever come up around Glencoe and look at, how we live, and as a community, how we live, as opposed to, say, the folks in St. Andrews or Copperopolis, and we're kind of a tight community. But this kind of stuff we just don't really know what to do. You call the sheriff, like I said, it's not his laws. These guys are taking water out of the river, damming creeks. And they got enough to do down here. We don't expect much, from the sheriff up there. I mean, and I'm not ragging on the sheriff's department. I know they're busy, and hopefully I know the money from the code enforcement is supposed to be used on this stuff, but if these guys happen to see something going on while they're cruising around looking at stuff, that's a good thing. I think it's great to have more cops up there myself. But anyway, I'm rambling, so that's it. But I just want to thank you guys for at least trying to do something.
Thank you. Well, if there are code violations that you see, I would encourage you to call our code enforcement office. We have recently increased staff, and our intent is to go after those violations. People illegally living on property in trailers, that kind of stuff. We are trying to take firm and quick action on those kind of violations.
Is that going to be part of like the money you've gathered from these applications? Is that?
If it's associated with the registration process, yes. Yeah. Getting a little off topic here, but so I guess we can wrap up.
Yeah. Yeah. With that, thank you for coming tonight. Again, please feel free to fill out a comment card and leave it for us. But you will be hearing from us again in the spring with the release of the draft EIR. Thank you.
Can we have a couple of minutes to fill that card out before you guys?
Sure. Yeah, we'll be around for a while.